Dzień dobry, witam serdecznie.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our special event. Welcome to the Freedom Games. My panelists include Professor Jerzy Buzek, member of the European Parliament and former Prime Minister of the Republic of Poland. Good afternoon. Kamil Wyszkowski, representative and president of the UN Global Compact Network Poland Council. Bernhard Heinz, a resident representative in Poland and the Baltics of the World Bank.
Good afternoon to you.
Karin Sköld, CEO, IKEA Retail Poland, member of the Program Council of the UN Global Compact Poland. And Mr. Niels Westerby-Juhl, General Director of L'Oréal Polska and the member of the UN Global Compact Program Council Network Poland.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very glad that you managed to find the time so that we can talk about the European Green Deal, a chance for Poland and Central and Eastern Europe. Professor Buzek, the European Green Deal, how can we take the opportunity that the Green Deal carries under pandemic and in the situation when the economies are in crisis? The question, to what extent can the Green Deal help us get over the crisis that we are suffering nowadays and that will definitely last after the pandemic? Some say that all these green issues should be put aside because now we are facing the crisis, or perhaps not. Perhaps the Green Deal is the opportunity to be turbo boosted during the crisis. Professor Buzek, over to you. First and foremost, we have to say where we are. We are in the Freedom Games. I would like to congratulate to Łódź on organizing such annual event. We have to say that freedom means responsibility or the obligation, and we should not keep these notions separate. We feel free. It means we have certain responsibilities and obligations. In the case of the European Green Deal, this is of paramount importance. We don't want it to be nice today, here and now. It's important. I don't want to diminish the significance of the present, but we want the Earth to be a place to live in 10, 40 and 100 years' time. We'll have our children, our grandchildren, our successors living. The Green Deal definitely fits this category. We often mean the European Green Deal in a wrong way, in a false way. In Poland, we hear we should close down the mines. It can be done, but that's not the point. The opportunity you mention is extremely important, but nowadays Poland has no access to cheap and easily accessible coal. We have the most expensive energy in Poland. 70% of energy of power generation is based on coal, and we are the weakest ones in Europe. We are not able to compete. So high prices for our companies, for our inhabitants, we feel it in our budgets. And we have no choice, to be honest. You are asking a question, is it possible? Is it feasible? Is it an opportunity? This is a great opportunity. If there was no Green Deal, no climate neutrality, which is our responsibility as part of the freedom, this is the responsibility of current inhabitants of the Earth who are adult, who are mature, who know what the relationships in social and economic relations are about. This is our responsibility. Even if it did not exist, Poland has to implement transformation, starting with power generation, because coal is no longer economical. I live in Silesia and I know how dangerous it is. Perhaps Silesia will be the area when the transformation will be implemented most easily. We suffer from smog, and every year thousands of people die prematurely because of smog. Fortunately, COVID is not as effective as taking our lives. Smog is much more dangerous. We talk about COVID, we talk about crisis, and we say, no, now we can't afford the new perspective, the Green Deal. I say, quite to the contrary, this is the right time. Since our economy has slowed down or has stopped, let's not come back to the old one. This is the unique chance. 30 years ago, Poland underwent transformation from the socialist system. We wanted to be in the EU and we wanted to be NATO member. We had to adapt to the new conditions, adopt new standards in agriculture. We restructured the whole dairy processing sector, and this is what helped us win on the European markets. We became competitive, and the same is true for the European Green Deal. Since COVID stopped us, and even if we have some weaknesses in some areas, let's remember, we should not come back to the old one. We should move forward in search of new solutions. This is building the new competitive economy based on innovation, based on continuous growth, developing jobs which are attractive for young people. This is also our cybersecurity and digital technologies, fighting or preventing digital exclusion. So if you ask a question, does it make sense? Will we succeed? We would have to do it anyway if we are responsible and we want to fulfill our obligations. And the European Union is willing to give big amounts of money. Poland can get around 50 billion euro for the green reconstruction. This is a lot of money. If you multiply it by 4.5 on 5, this is 200 billion zlotys. A lot of money to implement the transformation, the power generation, industry, SMEs, transport, agriculture, construction. Agriculture is the big space where we should operate. Our responsibility should suggest that the future of Poland, of Europe, and the world lies in such solutions. There is no return to the old order, old things. Okay, many people want to come back to the old solutions. Let's see the wider perspective. Kamil, the European Green Deal is the implementation of UN's climate policies, and it was announced during the climate summit COP25. What is the structure of the UN's climate policy, and are there any other non-European Green Deals? Let me remind you that in the US we have a change, and Joe Biden is entering his term, so we'll have new policy. Yeah, you are right. There are different versions of the Green Deal in different geographic locations. I would like to refer to what Professor Buzek said. We have the European Green Deal, and we know Europe very well because we live here. Since 1992, the UN has been implementing its policy. It started in Stockholm, then we had the Kyoto Protocol and climate summits that you have just mentioned. You are right, because during the Madrid summit, there was the famous speech of Ursula von der Leyen, who mentioned 100 days for preparing the package of actions for Europe. I do agree with Professor Buzek that Europe is the leader as far as implementing the UN's objectives is concerned. because on the occasion of the climate summit in Warsaw 2012, when the famous meeting between Barack Obama and the Chinese leader took place, and an agreement was struck that China will join the Paris Agreement. It marked the beginning of the memorandum of the agreement of all nations. During Trump's term of office, it was trembling a little bit, but now we're going to come back to the ambitious American climate policy, and consequently will have it as defined by the Democrats' campaign and according to what Joe Biden announced. We also have the African Green Deal and very interesting Asian Green Deal. We should also remember the Australian Green Deal. In Australia, we observe a similar process to the one we have in Poland. They also use coal. They have very strong mining sector that affects the country's economy, but we also have wind farms and solar farms. Similarly to Poland, they are experiencing a technological shift or technological jump and a change of paradigm. It is becoming more and more beneficial. I'm very happy to have Karin, Markus, and Niels with us. Markus will definitely talk more about it because he represents a bank. But let me also remind you that the Madrid version of the Green Deal had its New York pre-premiere. It happened in September 2019 when, during the United Nations Client Summit, the whole banking sector was invited to shift the capital to zero-emission investments. We have the representative of the World Bank with us, but we also have European banks. On the 26th of September 2009, we had an announcement, and then the commercial banks followed. They added money for green and zero low emission investments, which naturally support the European Green Deal or other green deals effective in other parts of the world. And that's great. There is definitely no point being too much excited about it, because there is a lot of hard work ahead of us in order to implement it. Referring to the amount of money mentioned by Professor Buzek, I wish you were our Prime Minister longer, because if you were the Prime Minister longer, we would definitely be in a different place now. But the history had a different vision, so that's it.
Thank you very much, Markus. Bernhard Heinz, who's the representative of the World Bank in Poland and the Baltic States. So climate solidarity and the fair transformation are very important issues, especially when we're talking about the new Green Deal here in Poland. The center of the fair transformation, human beings should be the center of this transformation. But will we be able to have this transfer from the high emissions to zero emissions? And there are these changes. We have to remember that the change of climate is not only the changes in the geography, but it's also the social movement, important social movement that takes place.
Yeah, thank you, Michel. I think migration is an important question because undoubtedly climate change is becoming an engine for migration. But I implore everyone to see this as more than just a global south to global north migration problem. More people will move within national borders to escape the effects of climate change than will pack up their bags and seek a better life in rich regions such as Europe. So we in the World Bank have studied this phenomenon and have come to the conclusion that global warming could by 2050 trigger as much as 143 million internal climate migrants in sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and South Asia. This is a projection, and it implies that nothing much is achieved in terms of fighting climate change, but with the right kind of actions, we calculate that this number of climate migrants can be cut up to 80% by 2050. That means, first and foremost, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Will we be able to do enough in time to cut greenhouse gases meaningfully? So, as Professor Buzek mentioned, an energy transformation is not something you can do overnight. Every country's energy mix needs to suit its unique needs, has to take market conditions and structures into account, relies on appropriate and sometimes difficult to change legal and regulatory frameworks that are then defended by vested interests. It requires sufficient institutional capacity and so on and so forth. But to give you a more concrete example, it took 50 years to replace the horse-driven buggies that crowded the city streets of the 19th and early 20th century with petrol-powered cars that we are trying to replace today. But the good news is that the global energy landscape is already witnessing a major transformation. Now just look at the rapidly declining price curve for photovoltaic cells. I myself am putting some on my roof right now, so I will be able to charge my next car, which will be electric, without having to use coal-generated power. So there's real hope that we can beat the horse-buggy transformation timeline, as renewable energy is increasingly playing a key role in helping countries develop a modern, secure energy sector that provides sustainable, reliable, and affordable energy to all. But we in the World Bank recognize that supporting the transition to renewable energy in today's power systems is one of the largest contributions we can make to tackling climate change. But apart from cutting greenhouse gases, the threat of climate migration also underscores the continued relevance of development aid for developing countries. The European Union and its member states, taken as a whole, are, I believe, the biggest donors of development aid globally. Using these funds well also implies that the World Bank and other developing partners need to actively embed climate migration into our development planning. We also need to ensure that we do not fly blind when addressing climate migration. There's a huge need to invest in data collection, so to fully capture the scale and scope of climate migration. Will it be enough? And will we be in time to allow people threatened by droughts, crop failures, and rising seas to stay in their home? It's possible, but only if we start to act now. And the European Green Deal is, in my view, a great roadmap for the EU on such coordinated actions.
Thanks a lot. Bardzo dziękuję. Teraz czas na...
Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to Karin Sköld, who is the CEO of IKEA. IKEA several times during this year has appealed to European politicians to increase their ambitions in terms of achieving climate neutralness. Why is it so important to us, and how important Poland is for these IKEA energy-related, climate-related ambitions? As Prime Minister Buzek mentioned, here we are looking at the 70% of energy in Poland being generated from coal. This ratio is the highest in the European Union.
I think also, like Professor Buzek said, right, I think the pandemic has shown to us that we as humankind are very vulnerable to facing the forces of nature. And looking then at the climate crisis and how it's developing, it's a much bigger threat for the future. And already it's affecting lives of many millions of people around the world. And I think that it's really not about the responsibility of the individual to fight the climate change. It's really the responsibility of all of us. And there, of course, businesses have a big role to play. And the bigger the business, as we see it, the bigger the role you have to play and the bigger responsibility you have to take. So what we see is that business leaders need to act and really take a lead on sustainable change, not to fight it. And I think the second part is that we need togetherness in this topic. We need to act together and we need to act now. We can also see that actually it makes a lot of business sense. And IKEA is strongly supporting the Green Deal, as you said, because caring for people and caring for the climate has always been part of our culture and also been deeply rooted in the way that we conduct our business. So now we are entering into our 2021 financial year, and we have called it the leap year of sustainability. And by that, we want to give the signal as well that it's not the time for small steps. It's really the time to take a big step forward. And we have a People and Planet Positive strategy that is both about how we will transform our own business, but also how we can inspire and enable our billions of customers to live a more healthy and sustainable life. And in this one, we have set ourselves very bold goals as well, and that we will be 100% circular and climate positive by 2030. And of course, this is a very bold and big goal for us, but we are committed to achieve it, and we are committed to achieve it as a brand, which means that it's across the whole value chain and it's worldwide. And here you can say that Poland is quite a special market for IKEA as well, because in Poland we have the whole value chain represented. We have the production, we have distribution, we also have our retail stores. And adding on top of this, Poland is the second largest country for IKEA production. This also means that it's also the second largest source of energy consumption. And not many people know it, but in IKEA we have really decided to invest into renewables. We are not only a furniture company, we're actually also an energy company. And if you look at the Polish market, since 2011, we have invested about 250 million euros into renewable sources. Today we have 6 wind farm parks consisting of about 80 wind turbines, and they are together producing about 450 gigawatt hours of electricity on an annual basis, which is more or less the same as giving power to about 190,000 households on an annual basis. So it's far more than we consume in our stores, our warehouses, and distribution centers. But I think we also want more. And we want to continue to invest. We are also looking into PV installations in our stores and distribution centers. We just have a PV installation finalized this year in our distribution center in Jarosti. And I think that to speed up these investments, there are 2 things that we see that we need. One is, of course, clarity on the direction of the energy transformation. And the second is to remove certain barriers when it comes to administration and regulation. And there, of course, we are also supporting the European Green Deal, because it really sets the ground for a good regulatory business environment for the renewables going forward.
Thanks a lot. Bardzo dziękuję. I pan Nils Westerberg.
Thank you very much. And the representatives of Floral Poland, Nils Westerberg-Jul. How does the business understand the time we are in, the moment we are in? We've got pandemic situation, there is a progressing degradation of the environment. To what extent business is able to undertake some concrete actions, and how ready it is to change the strategies? Pandemic is impacting this. So to what extent are we able to encourage business to make sure that it's not an individual separated action, but it's a long-term and strategic action?
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, first, just let me say, like Karin was saying, that really we cannot rely alone on governments or NGOs or other well-meaning people to solve this climate issue. It's really also the responsibility of corporations and big business to play their part. And in L'Oréal, we've had very ambitious environmental targets for more than a decade. But if you ask me if the pandemic and all of its negative effects, not only on the lives and health of our fellow citizens, but also on the economy, if that will slow down companies' willingness to move towards a more sustainable world, then I think the answer is no, not at all. Perhaps maybe even to the contrary. As again, referring to what Karin was saying, is that I think it has shown us that how vulnerable we are, how fragile we are, and that has just put an increasing focus on the other threats or the other things that threats the health and the way of living that we have. So sustainability, I think, is not just a fling or a trend that disappears with a pandemic like this. It may even see a strengthening. And I think a proof of that from our own standpoint is that that did not stop any initiatives. Actually, L'Oréal, we launched our most ambitious sustainability program and targets ever in July this year. I mean, in the midst of the pandemic, because I think it goes much beyond this hopefully temporary situation that we are all in. I think we have to show that it is really the responsibility of all, and especially also us. So for the L'Oréal for the Future, we have launched a very, very ambitious investment program for biodiversity, against deforestation, for circular economy, sustainable sourcing, etc., and setting very, very ambitious goals. So in only 5 years, all of our sites all over the world must be carbon neutral. In 2030, all of our products must have reduced their carbon footprint by at least 50%. We will be using 100% recycled or biosourced plastic by 2030, etc. And I could go on. So a lot of very, very ambitious targets that we have to set as a company. And I think it's an obligation, and it's not just an external obligation. It's also, fortunately, an internal obligation. We are consisting of a company and of people, and people expect this of us. So I think this is another strong motivator for companies to work in this direction. So we have a lot of very, very ambitious goals. And locally in Poland, of course, we as IKEA, by the way, we have one of our biggest factories in the world just outside Warsaw, and working very strongly there on water recycling stations to create a circular water loop, on waste reduction, no waste for landfill for the last 20 years, et cetera, et cetera. So really, even on local basis, working strongly on setting these goals and achieving them within the next decade. We can't wait.
Thanks a lot. Bardzo dziękuję. Przypominam, że jesteś...
Thank you very much. This is Freedom Games. Our panel is devoted to European Green Deal, a chance for Poland and Central and Eastern Europe. Professor Buzek, we are talking about the European Green Deal. So, since we have 15 minutes left, I would like to ask, to what extent the European Green Deal can be the factor which integrates Europe as far as climate objectives are concerned? Can it be an intergeneration project? Because we are severely diversified within a region, within a city, within the country, or within the whole continent. So to what extent can the European Green Deal be the bond, the adhesive for the whole country? This is a justified question, because this is not the first crisis that Europe has been experiencing. In the 1950s, Europe was also experiencing some problems. First, the French felt offended, then the UK had some issues, now we have the Brexit. But over and over again, there were different problems which required a strategic and far-fetched response to the European problems. Back in the 1980s, Schengen was invented, opened borders. In the 1960s and 1970s, European borders were not open even on the better side of Europe. We were on the worst side, east of Łaba River. That is why the common currency was formed. But Europe had its strategic plan to become extended. We all know how ingenious the program was, which said that we need to breathe with both lungs. The big extension, the 12 states, provided the impetus to move forward. We should pay attention to it, that we are a part of the European deal and not the Eastern deal, not the Eastern order. Sometimes the representatives of the ruling party forget that we are in the European Union and not in Russia and not in former communism. But nowadays, Europe has a perspective, a program for a 30-year perspective. This is a tremendous program. Europe adopted the European Green Deal a year ago. In July a year ago, there were some mentions of it. And in December 2019, the program was approved. So it was before the coronavirus. This is not a coronavirus program. Europe perfectly knew that new foundations for development should be built, that they should be long-term foundations, thinking about successors. 750 billion euro, so this is the additional money that the European Union is adding to the budget, and it is called the New Generation of the European Union. This is the name of the program. This program cannot be compared to any other. We have to realize that all these regulations, acts, directives, programs are very important. Just like in COVID, we have to be well organized and have well organized healthcare. We do have some problems with that. We should have lockdown or some limitations. Somebody should tell us how to behave. But first and foremost is how responsible we are individually. If we wear masks when we are among people, if we wash our hands, or if we observe the rules of hygiene, if we keep social distance, it's up to us individually whether we are going to win the fight with COVID. I respect all members of the European and Polish medical service, but it is up to us individually whether we are going to win with COVID. The same is with Green Deal. It's up to us, each of us, whether we are going to change our lifestyle, how we are going to use our cars on our own when we drive long distances, or will we say, don't buy a new one, mend the old one, use it for a long time, or will we say, no more plastics, circular economy, biodiversity, giving up eating meat. I have not been eating meat for 3 years now, and I have a person in my family who claims that you don't need meat to live. This is not simple, I know, but each of us individually has to take the responsibility. This is our obligation nowadays. If we all do it, and if we do it all, supported by the EU funds, will succeed from the point of view of the European Green Deal. This is a great program. Sometimes we tend to forget euro as the currency. I don't want to talk about it today. This is not important. The program which integrates the Europeans is the Green Deal, and climate neutrality in 30 years' time is only the cherry on the cake. That's the pleasant ending. This should not be promoted as the most important slogan. We have to maintain life on our planet, the green planet, which is a miracle, and we have devastated it. Our Euro-Atlantic responsibility is great because 300 years ago we invented Industrial Revolution. applying the growth and the progress. We invented marvelous things, free market, democracy, competition, technological progress, but this brings certain hazards nowadays. And this is our obligation to develop new civilization based on the three principles: democracy, free market, technological development. These are the three values that our civilization has embedded. Everybody in the world purchased it, but now we should show new perspectives. This is the integrating obligation of our continent. I'm sure it can bring us together. Let's hope that our country is going to participate in it in 100%. All right, so how to persuade the current government to accept climate neutrality? Because you, Prime Minister, know very well that if we don't support the EU objective, we are not going to get access to the money, such as Fair Transformation Fund, which we owe to you. The inhabitants of Silesia should be particularly grateful for that, because they are the ones who are going to take advantage of it, whether it's Silesia, Bełchatów, Turoszów, namely all these mining areas. Just one point to make. The money is for the whole Poland. We have the most expensive electrical energy in Europe. If we transform our power engineering sector, make it better and more economical, it's going to be beneficial for the whole country. In Pomerania, in Podkarpacie, in every region. They don't have mines, but their life is going to become easier. The money is for the whole Poland. Yes, you are absolutely right. I do hope that the power generating sector and power engineering is going to be more dispersed, because that's the point about the Green Deal. I mentioned the mining areas because this is where the power is generated and the money is supposed to go there. Kamil, over to you. We talk a lot about energy, because without the cheap energy, we're not able to compete. But the energy is important because it needs to be green. We have 5 minutes left. Will green technologies save us? What do we need to escape the current habit of using fossil fuels? Can hydrogen be the holy grail of power engineering?
As regards hydrogen, it's very interesting. I'm happy that you've started this discussion, because I would like us to use the wisdom gathered by the past generations. Well, there was this Apollo program by NASA in 1961. This is when it all started. It lasted until 1984. Somebody invented that we can use a hydrogen-related solution as to use hydrogen as the source of energy. For the global warming and for the climate crisis, we have to remember the strategic thinking. I was one of the co-authors of the Boni's report. I'm talking about the report Poland 2030. We have mentioned that Poland should try to focus on this idea of generating energy from hydrogen, but maybe it wasn't optimum, but it was available. So this is probably the key problem in Poland. Every new government is having a new strategy. So in this part of Europe, we are unable to focus on the actions that have been started by the previous governments. I didn't want I wanted to mention what Professor Buzek has mentioned, but if we continue the work you have started, now we would be in a completely different place. We would have much more money available for the Green Deal. Each macroeconomist knows these ideas, these solutions. I can see that the lady from IKEA wanted to contribute a comment. I just wanted to mention climate solidarity. This is something which is the foundation for the green order in Europe. Our generation today is working on opportunities for the next generations. If our generation of Europeans, passes this exam in responsibility, and once this Green Deal is implemented for the next decade, then the historians of the future will praise us for a good job done. Karin, Mrs. Karin Scott of IKEA Polska, would you like to say something?
Thank you, and thank you, Kamil, as well. I just wanted to come back to one thing that Professor Buzek mentioned about technology as well, because I think that one myth that we need to take away going forward is that sustainability is a premium. I think that sustainability and affordability needs to go hand in hand. And we really see that when we are developing our range and when we're developing our circular offer, we really can make that happen. So sustainability needs to be accessible to the many people at a very affordable cost or at affordable price. And you can mention many, many different products, and the same we are doing as well with our price investments. So for example, now we have launched our plant balls for meat lovers that are very much appreciated by the customer. And then we are also doing direct price investments so that all our customers can enjoy them at a 15% discount, so they are cheaper than the original meatball. And I think this is things that we need to do as well as businesses, to stop looking at sustainability products as a premium. They should be affordable, and we should really promote them to be the standard choice for our customers. Thank you.
Bardzo dziękuję, szanowni państwo. Nasz panel Europejski Zielony.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This panel of the European Green Deal has just come to its end. Thank you very much to all the panelists. The guest included Professor Jerzy Buzek, who is a member of the European Parliament. Thank you very much. Greetings. Mr. Kamil Wyszkowski, a representative and president of the UN Global Compact Network Poland Council. Kamil, thank you very much. Thank you. I would also like to say thank you to Mr. Bernhard Heinz, who's a representative of the World Bank in Poland and the Baltics. Marcus, thank you very much for taking part in this discussion.
It's been a pleasure.
I would also like to thank Karin Sköld, who is CEO IKEA Retail Poland, who is a member of the Program Council of the UN Global Compact Poland. Thank you. And Mr. Niels Westerby, Director General of L'Oréal Poland and the Baltics. Mr. Yu is also a member of the UN Global Compact Program Council Network Poland. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Bardzo dziękuję. To są oczywiście Igrzyska Wolności.
So we are taking part in the Freedom Games. We were talking about the European Green Deal. Let us hope that this European Green Deal will be implemented also here in Poland, and hopefully Poland will introduce the entire plan, including the strategic objective of the climate neutrality in 2050. My name is Michał Niewiadomski. Thank you very much for taking part in this meeting, and please stay healthy in this difficult pandemic time.